I've picked as my game of the day from round 2 of the Biel tournament the game between Richard Rapport from Hungary and Alexander Moiseenko from the Ukraine. Now, Rapport is a very aggressive player, and today he's played e4, which is a little bit unusual for him. And Moiseenko was ready with his Sveshnikov, probably, but Rapport has sidestepped that with bishop b5. Of course, it's not mainline open Sicilian, but bishop b5 is still quite a popular move. And, well, one of the reasons is that white manages to castle very, very quickly indeed. And that presents something of a problem for the black king. Rook e1 played. Now, you can play with e5 here to try and sort of clamp white in the centre, but I have a funny feeling that Rapport would have played this very interesting gambit with b4, but okay, that's another story. But Moiseenko decided to play in a very orthodox way with knight f6, and this has been seen many times before. It looks slightly odd to have the knight pushed around, but actually white can't really make much of this. So this is pretty standard stuff. The knight drops back to c7, and you can see that this pawn on e5, if white isn't careful, could be rounded up. But white takes and plays knight e4. This is very standard indeed. So the knight threatens the pawn on c5. And now here the main move is knight e6. And then white plays like this, and with bishop e3 and queen d2, and now f5 for black and bishop h6 and so on. It's been seen many, many times, and it's roughly level, but you know, maybe it's a bit easier for white to play than black. But Moiseenko was really up for a fight today, and instead of this he played quite a daring move, b6. So that leaves the line of the bishop open, so the bishop can come out to maybe g4 or f5 or e6, but allows knight f6 check. Now, of course, this shouldn't be taken, because white will get back the bishop, and then, well, let's say b3, and, well, white stands clearly better here. You know, there's real danger on the dark squares. So instead, king f8. This is actually pretty normal. It's been played before, but still quite daring, because although, you know, there are advantages leaving this diagonal open, the king has been displaced. But white has lost a lot of time in doing that. h6. I mean, if black wants to play more solidly, then bishop g4 is a very good move, because this bishop doesn't do much anyway. And the knight comes probably to this nice outpost. For example, bishop h6, making room for the king, and I don't think black has any problems at all. But Moiseenko wanted to play much more ambitiously, and after this he played g5. So advancing, although his king hasn't found yet a really safe home. And, well, I think Rapport would have been very happy at this point, because suddenly he has something to bite on. You know, this knight might swing round into h5. Okay, bishop e6, black develops kind of normally. And now I didn't like queen d5 from Moiseenko. This looks strange to me, because actually I think white actually wants to play c4. I understand that he wants perhaps to create this backward pawn on d3, but really white can defend that without any problems. For example, if rook d8, then you don't even need to waste time playing rook d1. You can play bishop b2, and this isn't happening at all because of this deadly pin. So after this, f5 from black. And of course, white takes. Those pawns are too dangerous rolling down the board, and bishop b2. And here I really like white's position. There is a very if black does very little, there's a really simple plan for white, and that is rook d1 and d4, and, well, white's initiative is tremendous. So h5 from Moiseenko, so this stirs things up a bit, and now Rapport played rook e3. I'm not I'm not sure about that move. When I was looking at this online, there was a very nice suggestion, I think, h4. And the point of this is obviously to block the pawns. And now the knights are going to spin around trying to find weak squares in black's position. So, for example, well, if bishop f5, then the knight comes to e4 and f6 is attacked. Or if f5, well, I mean, maybe just a rook d1 here, but I mean, we were also looking at knight e2 to come into e6, to come into f4. Now maybe the bishop can drop back and the knight comes to e6. Perhaps black is okay there, but so perhaps rook d1 instead. And well, it's a very double-edged position. If the pawn advances, then the knight comes into e4. Double-edged, but I still feel that white has the better chances in this position because black still hasn't managed to connect his rooks. The king is still in the funny position. So h4 would be my favoured move there, but instead Rapport played rook e3. And after this, Moiseenko said that he felt he was going to be okay, particularly after h3, when white's king always has some kind of problems. There's always going to be some kind of counterattack at some point, and yeah, white's position just isn't what it was. And here, well, Rapport sacked a pawn. You know, he's a very aggressive player, but it might have been better, as Moiseenko suggested, just to put the queen on a1 to hit the pawn on f6. Now, probably black is okay here. I think it's an important move to play g4 in order to get knight into d4, but that might be white's best way of playing. Instead, Rapport sacrificed this pawn, but he just doesn't have enough for it. I mean, it looked very interesting. I have to admit that during the game, I thought that probably white had sufficient initiative here. But Moiseenko was very cool indeed with the way that he played this. He found g4. His idea is very simple indeed. It looks very slow, but what he wants to do is, I know this rook looks very odd here. It's not connected, but he's just protecting g5. So his plan is very simple, just to play f5, and that opens up the line of the bishop, but importantly brings the rook back into play. And white doesn't really have a very good idea against this. So black is a pawn up, his bishops are now working, and this is an excellent move. He wants to break up these pawns, gain control over d5, and then remind white that his king isn't very secure. Now it's still not over. Knight e3 looks like a better move to hit f5. Even so, after knight d6, hitting c4 and defending f5, black must be better here. Instead, Rapport went all in. The players were both a little short of time, and Rapport gambled with this move. He gave another pawn, and now he even gave a piece. And, well, it looks kind of threatening, white's pieces. You know, they're all on the attack, but now black's counterattack suddenly comes through. Queen a1 threatened, so this has to be taken, and now bang, c5 opening up the long diagonal, queen g2, mate threatened, and it's all over. I mean, well, let's see. King f1, I suppose, is possible. It prevents the mate, and now there are going to be many, many ways to win this position. You could come in with the queen, but, well, I quite like this move. Rook e6. And that forces an exchange because queen g2 mate is threatened. And now here, both knights are on prise, and let's not forget that black still has moves like this, or queen h1, so this is all over. Oh yeah, and black is a piece up, of course. So that looks like a convincing win for black, and indeed Rapport resigned after c5. I thought Moiseenko was very brave in that game. You know, he could have played far more calmly in the opening, but he was really up for a fight. And Rapport maybe showed some weakness there. He overpressed when he should have just kept the game a lot quieter and perhaps just played for a draw at some point. There we go, round 3 tomorrow, starting at 2 p.m. in Central European local time, and my commentary will start at 2:30 on playchess.com.